Hey, hello everyone, and welcome to our Inclusion and Wellbeing Forum for December 2024. It's our final recording of the year. Just to make everyone aware, we are recording the session and we will be posting on our YouTube channel, where you can find literally hundreds of videos with experts just like Angelique, who join us every month to share really good practice tips and tools for inclusive practices in schools. We would invite everyone to attend, as always. If you have any questions, please pop them in the chat or raise your hand. I'll keep an eye on the chat. We welcome comments and input from all of our attendees. Please don't name your school or individual children by name. Please be mindful of confidentiality. While we present ideas and tips every month, it's always important to ensure that whatever you implement in a school, that you check first with your individual school's policy, and your school always policy comes first. So while we make recommendations, it is not a guideline per se, it is just ideas and tips to support learning. This month, we're joined by Angelique van Tonder, who is the Head of Inclusion at Dubai Schools Al Barsha. She is an absolute gem and expert. She shares very widely on LinkedIn, and she's got really good information all around inclusive practices. So I'm very excited for our session, and I will hand over to Angelique. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Catherine, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. Again, I agree with Dr. Catherine. If you have any questions, please feel free to share your information or ask questions. I'd be more than happy to stop. I love talking and interacting, so tell me when to stop and I'll definitely have a chat with you if you have any questions. So I'd like to discuss some aspects related to early childhood development and the importance of language, and how play is such an important early childhood milestone that all children need to go through. It is also very important to know that within the UAE, there was a lot of focus recently on improving early childhood development, which is excellent. The Early Childhood Development Authority has been up and running now for almost 2 years. So a lot of changes have happened since then, or since a couple of years ago, with regards to early childhood development and where we want to see language acquisition, play-based learning, social development, and cognitive development for children. So let's get started. So what is speech and what is language? This is my first introduction question. So do you think there's a difference between the two, or do you think it's the same? Anyone can pop in the chat or raise their hand.
Anybody? Come on, guys, we're all educators. It's always better when we get some interaction. So pop through, or maybe put it in the chat.
Yeah, don't be shy.
Angelique, they are always going to be so shy.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay,
but
we'll
try to encourage them. Come on.
Oh,
well
yeah.
done. Well done, Avani. Avani is going to try. Well done, Avani. And you'll come through.
I think language is a medium of speech.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So,
and then what would speech be?
A mode of communication.
Okay, yeah, you're on the right track.
It can be anything. It can be verbal, non-verbal. It can be gestural. It can be anything, but a mode of communication. And language is a mode of speech.
Yeah, it's a very hard concept to define. So if you see the word speech, think of the mechanics of speaking, okay? That ability that we have, the physical motor skill, the pronunciation of language, how we produce sounds, our expressive skills. Then language is what we speak. So if I have to make it as plain and simple, speech is how you form your mouth in order to express yourself. And language is your language that you speak. So you could speak Arabic, you could speak Hindi, you could speak English, you could speak Tamil, you could speak Dutch, German, whichever way. And it's the different structures and components as well of language that makes that language unique. Okay, so if we use the example of pronunciation, how we speak, in, let's say, French was completely different to how we speak English, and the pronunciation and the structure of language is also very different. So we have to take that in account when we teach these students in the classroom, if they come from a second or even a third language background. How are we supporting them? How are we scaffolding their learning for them to be able to access what they need to access when it comes to language acquisition in the classroom? So some points to consider when it comes to language acquisition and development. Language can develop and support cognitive and social development. Those are the big areas. So the more we learn, I always say this to the kids, the more we learn, the bigger our brains will grow. So the more language we have, the more vocabulary we have, the better we will become at problem solving. We'll improve our social and emotional skills. And that's also a form of developing our emotional intelligence as well. Language development can start with sounds and gestures. Just like I forgot the person who just said that before. Yes, it starts with sounds and gestures. So later on, I'll show you when a baby is born between the ages of 0 and 3 months, what does that language look like for them at that developmental stage? And then storytelling, singing, talking, for those of you who work in KG and in nurseries, this is our bread and butter: storytelling, singing, dancing. How are we using language in everyday subjects or everyday elements to enhance that in the students that we have? Then language can support receptive and expressive development. So for those who are unfamiliar with these terms, receptive language is you hear. So think of your ear as a receptor, and expressive is your mouth. So that's the speech center as well, right? Express and understand emotions. That's very important for you to be able to gauge in society where you are. When a baby is born, they see they hear things for the first time, and then as their sight develops, they put those feelings and emotions towards that facial expressions. Support, think, and learn. So how we problem solve, that's also got a lot to do with language. Gauging where we are in our environment, and then looking outside our environment, how that develops as well. Develop and maintain relationships. And this is from an inclusion perspective, what we look at when we assess children and when they come into the school, or when I used to work in a clinical center, what we look at in children. How do they socialize? How do they interact? How do they separate from mom and dad? And is it within age norms and age developmental expectations? Yeah. So these are our domains of early childhood development. There are 5 domains for those who are maybe familiar with it already. So it's physical health and well-being, social competence, emotional maturity, and then the 2 that we're going to focus on today is language and communication. And please note that language and communication are not the same. Similar to how I had you think about what is speech and what is language. So think about language as that cognitive skill that you have in school, for example, how you are developing your skills in literacy and numeracy, and how you speak in school, for example, the academic skill. And then communication is how you interact. So if you're the child, how am I interacting with mom, with dad, with my friends, and my environment as well? A big component of early childhood development is how the child interacts with their environment. You're going to see that build as a theme throughout, hopefully. So the stages of language development, if you can scan that QR code, it's a wonderful resource that I found on the Welsh Education Department website, and it provides you with exactly the structure and understanding of what children need to know at various stages. So if we look at what does language development mean at birth, it is recognition. So like I said, when a baby is born, they hear first, and then they need to make sure that whatever they heard in the womb, like they say always, they hear the sounds, or they hear the mom's voice or the dad's voice when they're in the womb. When they're born, the focus for language development is recognition. Can they recognize mom's voice? Can they recognize dad's voice? Then when it comes to age 3 to 6 months, we look at attention. Where is mom and dad's voice coming from? Can I stay focused when mom is singing a song to me, for example? This is also very important, because when we're looking at not necessarily diagnosing students, but identifying language delay in certain students. You will notice that they might have recognition difficulties at the age of 4, or language attention difficulties at the age of 4 or 5. These are things that we need to kind of look out for as our red flags, mental red flags. Then when we look at ages 6 to 12 months, we can see things like location and differentiation. So for example, if a child is playing and you're calling the child that is 12 years old, or 12 months old, sorry, can they turn their head and know where the sound is coming from? Can they also differentiate? So when we say differentiate, not necessarily academic differentiation, but foreground and background noises. So for example, I'm sitting here at the moment. My office is facing the highway at the back, the Al Khail highway, and I can still hear the cars in the background, but I am able to communicate with you at the same time. So location, where my voice is coming from, and if you are also hearing noises in the background, can you differentiate and distinguish between when to listen to me and when to listen to the cars in the background, for example? Then when you look at the ages of 12 to 18 months, this is the early stages of reciprocal language. So for example, you'll see a lot of babbling. So a lot more babbling, a lot more attempts at using language. You'll see these really cute Instagram babies trying to argue with their parents about things, but making no sense. This is still reciprocal language. They are trying to interact, and we want to see that. That is normal development for language. We want to see that the stubbornness that we sometimes ask culturally that we don't like in babies, but that's so important because we want them to develop language. We want them to develop that yes, mom, no, mom, and their tantrums that come along with that, because that's all social emotional norms that we want to see. Then for 18 to 2-year-old, expressive speech and language start to develop then. When we look at language development here, you'll probably see that the child would use 2 words or words that are not cohesive in a sentence. So if they say, Ali needs shoe, for example, instead of saying, I am looking for my shoes or I need my shoes, that is our 5-6 word sentences. But when a child is really young at the ages between 2 and 3, they're still developing their language. 18 months, you'll see them use a little bit of the language, or they'll point, or they'll say, I want the water. That is perfectly fine. How are we going to help the child in that case when we're support teachers in the classroom? We are going to model speech. So for example, if I want my bottle and I don't know how to say the word bottle, I'm going to say, As a teacher, I can go, do you want your bottle? And my encouraging language is, use your words. What is it? At least aim for bottle. If they say bottle, you're going to praise and say, good job, you used the word bottle. We don't want a full sentence because not all children develop equally at that stage, but we want expressive language. We want to encourage that as much as possible. Vocabulary development is so important. Within this age range, you'll also see students developing their sense of emergent literacy. Now, emergent literacy is your ability to be able to say the word McDonald's, Pepsi, Coca-Cola, all those terms without knowing how to spell them necessarily. But that is vocabulary development. That is language development. Where are we going to go today? We're going to go to Carrefour. We don't necessarily know how to spell the word Carrefour, but we know the blue C when we see it. And it's the same with some of the boys knowing how to play Nintendo or Legos. The word Lego they see and they want to go into the shop. When it comes to 2 to 3 years old, they begin to listen to stories. It's very important for us to note that getting distracted and children having poor sustained attention is normal at this stage. There have been so many teachers that have said to me in nursery and KG, they're struggling with these kids to let them sit still. Between the ages of 3 to up to sometimes 6 years old, it is normal for them to get distracted. It is perfectly normal for them to get bored of what you're saying. They don't want to listen to us all the time. They want to interact. They want to engage. They want to play. They want to be a little bit hyperactive. And that doesn't mean they've got ADHD or any of the other labels. This is within age expected norms. So can they listen to a story? A short story, yes. When you read the story to them, when they listen to the story, can they engage in that type of conversation? They're trying to engage as much as they can, but it's our job to give them the vocabulary for that. So if you do your big book stories, where are your big, nice flashcards of words that you want to teach them? We always had this rule when I was a KG teacher, and I had a wonderful, wonderful principal who said to me, every time you do a big book, you have to have at least 5 words as your key vocabulary words so that the kids can take those words home and use them and play with them. Are you using them in your sensory corner? Are you using them in your imaginary corner? Are you using them in your little kitchen that you have? So how are you using those words that you're encouraging the students to take part in? Then ages 3 to 4, they can now listen to a story with more attention, interact, answer a little bit of questioning. If you think about the hungry caterpillar story that all kids love at this age, how many apples did the caterpillar eat? They should be able to say 3 or 4. Now, if you want to encourage language development, you're going to say 4 apples and not just the word 4. And I know it sounds very silly when I say that, but think about your natural progression of learning a second language. You might only remember 1 word or 2 words initially, but then as you develop your second language ability or your third language ability, you build your vocabulary. So we need to make sure that we also apply how we learn to how kids learn and adjust our expectations a little bit more. Now, language and sensory development is very, very important. So anything, like I said before with the scaffolding part, anything that goes into our brain in some sort of sensory way. So our frame of reference and our scaffolding is different to everyone's scaffolding. So my frame of reference to what a tree looks like, if I say the word tree, what tree image comes to mind? Is it a tree that you saw in a book? Is it a tree that you had as a child in your backyard? Is it a tree that got chopped down and that's your tree frame of reference? But this is so important with regards to language, because imagine you have a child, and this is a child that I've had before as well, where we had to do fruits, the names of the different fruits, and I gave the fruit to the child without it being sliced. The child had no idea what a pineapple looked like without it being sliced. So that child's language and that child's frame of reference for what that fruit looked like was completely different to mine. Growing up where I could pick the apples from the tree or the pears from the tree or the peaches from the tree, or going to the farmer to get the milk. My question as well to the same child when I was helping them with language development is where does milk come from? And the classic, where does milk come from? It comes from the shop. So I said, okay, now we need to explore, but where does the shop get it? The shop gets it from the truck. So in that frame of reference, the child had a big disconnect between where things come from, what it looks like, and that we shouldn't see that as a disconnect in their environment. It should be a disconnect in their language, because if we don't provide them with the language, then how are we expecting them to interact with their environment? I can't say it's the environment's fault if the child doesn't have that ability yet. So I always tell the teachers at uni that I teach as well, think about it as a triangle. What your ears hear, what your eyes see, what your mouth kind of talks about, that's your triangle, and the brain is in the middle. So when you hear something, you are going to create a frame of reference, or you're going to put it in your filing cabinet in your brain, okay? Your brain already knows what this thing sounds like. Does your brain know what this thing looks like? Does your brain know what it smells like? So one of the activities that I would like you to just take part in with me is this one right here. So as a test, I want you all to say to yourself, you can type it in the chat if you want to, what is the first thing that comes to mind when you see the word, I've forgotten where everything is, hospital, for example, okay? Your frame of reference and your language acquisition to the word hospital might not be the same as mine. You could think of a beautiful hospital. For example, I think of the hospital in Cape Town. As I drive past the mountain, the big hospital where Dr. Chris Barnard did his first heart transplant was there. So your frame of reference, what does it say about hospital? You can type it in the chat box as well.
We've got Wendy said needle, Nadia.
Ooh.
Yeah, this is, where do we go first? I said sick. Nadia said bills, which is really
Yes.
Cribet, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, a Red Cross. Jaya, doctor, Andrea, nurses, Rishat, where is that gone? They're moving too quickly. Sickness.
Yeah.
Temple. That's an interesting one.
So some hospitals have the churches and the temples inside there. Yeah.
Yeah. Operation, nurses, pain.
So I want you all to have a look at all the words that just came up when I gave you guys the word hospital. That's the first thing. Now think about a child who has not been exposed to language at all. If you give them the word hospital, they might only know the word sick, or they might only know the word doctor. So we can use all of these experiences to teach them about doctor, and that is where play comes in. So if you do a little play corner, do a hospital bed, do a doctor coming to visit, or a dentist. Okay, the next one we can look at is water. What comes to mind when you think of the word water?
Okay, I put in thirsty. And Cribet, the same, thirsty, life, thirsty, beach, sea. Thank you, Nadia, and for me. Hanuna, sea, Tina, thirsty, Deepa, blue color, pretty, rain, Resma, thirsty, Jaspy, wet, Eunice, rain, thirsty, water bottle, quench thirst, swim. Gosh, there's a theme around the sea, isn't there?
So now I want to challenge everyone, because there might be some of you who have a superpower and you might be too shy to say what your superpower is. But most people, or I would say not most people, some people, because it's not a superpower that everyone has, instead of thinking or seeing the picture in their mind or thinking of these words, they smell. And it's an amazing skill that you have when you have different types of sensory development. So if I say the word hospital, instead of you thinking doctor, nurse, needle, all those things, you would smell a hospital, because your olfactory part, your nose, your senses, is telling you one thing about how important that hospital was, or a memory that invokes something about a hospital. Water, for example, for me, I smelled the rain. Because the small village I came from, a very small farming town, as soon as it rained, the rain that touches the soil, that smell stays with me forever. And I can't do it with all words. It's some words that have a really powerful sensory, that's my filing cabinet in my brain. It doesn't happen with all words, but water is one of my words. So if you're one of the superpower people, please tell me in the comments as well. It's very interesting to meet more people like that. I'm sure.
Very unusual as well. I worked with a client here who had really profound synesthesia, and he had music in his brain almost all the time, and it would give him really profound visual. I don't know, they're not called hallucinations, but they are kind of visual imaging, aren't they?
Yes, they are. So yeah, synesthesia, like Dr. Catherine said, some people can, for example, see numbers, and it is sort of a form of hallucination, but it isn't, because I know some people who are excellent in math who have it, and they can it's like the numbers are in front of them and they just know the answer. And it's the same with the senses. They see things, they experience it completely differently. And I think that they said that Mozart had that, and that's why he could compose so well.
Yeah.
Night.
Okay. Oh, Letitia is saying she has that. She can, especially with the ocean and rain, she has some touch of synesthesia.
Oh, that's great.
Okay, Britty, sleep. Wendy, sleep. Inform me. Sleep. Everyone's saying sleep. Night, peace. Moon and stars, stars, Zen.
Everyone's tired today.
Yeah. Aisha, moon. Chintu, moon. Letitia, moon. Wonderful. Rishit, dreams. Oh gosh,
Yeah.
very much associating with the bed and sleep, aren't we? Peace.
So I want to challenge those of you who you saw the word night and you saw how I spelled it. But imagine you're a child who cannot read and you hear that the teacher says the word night. And I recently had this with one of my older boys who have dyslexia. And his question was, Miss, are you talking about night as in when the moon is out? Or are you talking about the brave knight that's going to save the young lady? So he had two images ready in his mind already to tell me which side he was going to. So without context, always try to think about, and I'll show you some resources later when we discuss widget as well and how to use it. But make sure that when you give a frame of reference where a word has a homonym or a homophone, make sure that there is a visual with that to aid students who need additional support with vocabulary.
Patience or a question? Maybe not. Okay.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to go back to the screen so that we can go here. Okay. Now, as I said before, with regards to scaffolding, I know some of you have already heard of this term, but it's so important and I've used it, since I started studying, and I still use it now in inclusion and language development. The zone of proximal development is so important. And we link it to cultural diverse or cultural responsive teaching. So cultural responsive teaching is where am I in my understanding of a concept or of a frame of what's my frame of reference? What do I know and where am I going to go? What is beyond my reach? So for example, we look at parts to whole. That's a concept within language development. And I say that this child doesn't know, for example, different types of deer, okay? But then as I develop my my sense of observation and monitoring of the child, I see actually the child doesn't know parts of the animal. Do they know the word antlers? I can't talk to a child about different types of deer, which is the great concept of deer, if I haven't spoken about the parts of that animal. The parts of the animal is also vocabulary that we can look at. So see it as when you're that age of 2 to 3 years old, when you are developing yourself, or 0 months to 3 months, where you're developing your gestures, like we said before, the mama, mama, baba, those kinds of developmental stages. See that as your head, shoulders, knees, and toes area, where I need to know what my parts of my body are to move them, to use them. I'm not going to say I'm going to hit you with my foot if I'm going to hit you with my hand. And I play this game with the KG students a lot, where I tell them like, oh, this is my big toe. Oh, this is my big toe. So point out something on yourself that's really funny, because laughter also helps a lot with language development. So most of the students would say, oh gosh, what was it? When you would ask them a question, and instead of thinking and processing, they would just shout out the answer. So I would tell them, okay, everyone, think about it first and then answer the question. So I always have this thing where I tell them, do you hear with your eyes? Do you hear with your mouth? What do you hear with? So if you try to make it as funny as possible and link that zone of proximal development, where are they in their understanding? What do they need to learn? What can we do to scaffold their learning? So using your senses is really the biggest one that I can say that's important for us to do. Then here we are with the scaffolding. So scaffolding, think about building a structure, building a foundation. You have your house. What am I putting in place? What am I literally putting in place for a student so that they can develop the skills they need to develop to understand expressive and receptive language? How are we encouraging them to use it? So determine what the student already knows. That's our prior knowledge. That's our zone of proximal development. What do they know? They know different types of colors, for example. Set a goal for what you want them to know. Now we're going to expand to different colors, so shadings, for example. Plan instructional support. How are we going to support their understanding? And it should not just be written text. Every child from early childhood development, we need to make sure that everything is sensory, not overwhelmed, because if it's too much, then it's going to be too much for the teacher as well to handle. But I always have this rule of thumb when I set up a classroom, 2 really good sensory activities and a third one to back you up. So I always make sure that I have tactile kinesthetic, because that is the biggest way that children learn at a young age. And then I swap between either visuals or auditory instructions a lot more. So depending on that, I always try to have at least 3 in the classroom to make it all learning possible for the students. Then how am I going to implement that into my lesson? And how am I going to assess whether the child knows what to do? So the best part about early childhood development is we don't have to do scary formal assessments or, scary tests that they have to do in grades 4, 5 and up. You can test using differentiated teaching methods. You can test verbally, you can test actively. For example, if you want them to identify left and right, how are you doing it? Are you doing it with a song? Are you doing it with a dance? Are you doing it by catching a ball? Then we fade the support. The last 2 boxes focus on the gradual release of responsibility model. I'm not sure if those of you who've heard of it before, but the gradual release of responsibility model is I am supporting the child 100%, and then my percentage of support decreases. It doesn't mean that my monitoring and my observation support is decreasing. Just what I am trying to for the child to reach towards is independence. So I'm giving them all the vocabulary that they need, and then I leave them. So see it as picture and the definition of whatever I'm trying to teach them. Can they match the picture to the definition? Can they discuss it with a friend? Can they demonstrate it through play? Okay. Then I see that there's something where the child might struggle with the concept. And I do. Sorry, is someone wanting to ask a question?
No, I don't think so. I think maybe it's just the volume came on. I've put them on mute.
Just mute them.
Okay, perfect. If anyone wants to ask something, please feel free to ask anything. Then I would, when we give the child the vocabulary, we see they make a mistake with it, but we don't identify the mistake when they're that young. We guide them into using the correct terms. We don't say, oh no, that was a mistake. That's not the word you're supposed to use. We guide them in a positive way to say, oh, sort of like I showed you before with, oh, my goodness, do I hear with my mouth? Do I hear with my eyes? And that's also very good because other children can also hear that and they can learn from each other. So I'm not giving them the right answer. They're learning through that environment that I'm setting for them or that I'm creating for them. Then linking the play is also a fun one that we're going to look at now. So unoccupied play is our first stage of developmental play. So when we look at how a baby plays, 0 to 3 months, that's the movement of the arms and the legs and the sounds that they make and the giggles that you see later on that develops. These 6 stages of play are very important because we can also identify developmental delays in a child when they are not able to play. And play shouldn't be seen as something as just, I put my child there and they play with their cousins, or my child is there with their brother and sister and they can take care of themselves. We need to put our analytical lenses on when we look at the stages of play. So like I said, body movements are very important. So when you're pretending to tickle your baby or you're playing the hide and seek game with hiding your face, these all involve movements and reactions that you want to build in the child. And that's the first form of play for a child, essentially. Then solitary play, they start around the age of up to 2 years old, and they play alone. And that's perfectly normal. I want you to notice this as well when you put on your analytical lenses. Developmental play comes in stages. I always tell parents not to worry too much if a child is still learning to play and learning to interact, because this is again normal developmental play. It's right for them to play alone. They want to explore by themselves. If you think about yourself, how did you learn to cook by yourself or cook for other people? You had to practice by yourself first, and then you apply the skills later on. Onlooker play is also very important. This is also one where we see a lot of children being hesitant if they come from households where they're the only child, that they're hesitant to interact and they don't know how to interact yet. So they'll look like they want to play and they want to engage. Either they don't have the language to do so, or they're too hesitant to interact because they don't have the skills yet. So your job as teachers or as TAs, so important when it comes to onlooker play, because at this stage, you can ask them questions. What is Ahmed doing? What is Alia doing? Those what questions are so important. Who is she playing with as well? That's a good question for a 2-year-old to answer. Do you want to play with them? And how you structure that as well. They like to watch others, but how are you going to encourage them to engage? It's not about forcing them. It's about first asking your strategic questions and then saying like, oh, there's a fish over there. Can you please get me that fish? And then exploring with the child to engage through language and communication. Then the next 3 stages, parallel play, 2 years of age and up. Parallel play, you must have heard that a lot. It's playing along or near someone. So parallel play, the one child plays here, the other child plays here. They are doing their own thing. And that's, again, perfectly normal. We want them to do parallel play because that means that they can socially interact with one another by doing their own thing, which is perfectly normal again. Association play, similar to parallel play, but now they're interacting more with each other. So let's say there's a boy playing with trucks and a girl playing with her Barbie dolls. They can still talk to each other. My Barbie dolls are going to the shop and my truck is going to go get some petrol or some gas, but they're interacting with each other by playing their own games. Another good example for association play is when you see kids playing on the playground. They might be doing their own thing, running around, freedom, and you see them shouting and running in circles. That is association play. They're interacting with each other, but they're in their own playful worlds, if I can put it that way. Then cooperative play. So cooperative play should be in place around 4. So when a child enters KG1, then that is still the developmental stage. So we want to see association play, but we also want to see a little bit of attempt at cooperative play. If we see parallel play at around the age of KG1, KG2, then that must be a flag where you have to kind of go, I think I have to talk to my SENCO or my designated SEN teacher about those milestones that I'm not seeing in that child. So again, cooperative play, same activity, same engagement. They can interact with one another. They can speak about the topic. Both are playing with the cards. Both are playing with the Barbie dolls, or both are trying to play doctor or dentist or something like that. So I wanted to share something with you that I share with my teachers in my school. You can scan the QR code again if you'd like to. The early childhood development milestones for KG1. So I made it as KG1 because my frame of reference is culturally responsive teaching. That means I'm going to take into account, yes, the milestones that are set for child development, which is medically set. We cannot change that. But I am going to apply it to the cohort of students that I'm teaching now. I'm not expecting, toileting is my first one there, and I'm sure that most of you have issues with toileting. I'm not expecting my children who enter KG1 to be fully toilet trained, because no child can take care of themselves fully toilet trained at that age. Depends on how you grew up and if you have more siblings, but there's a lot of gray areas or room for negotiation when it comes to that. So your understanding of child development, how you raise your child, these are the important things that I want to highlight in this section. I want you to look then at, for those of you who've already opened it, I've categorized it in the 5 domains. So physical development, what is expected of a child by the age of 4 to be able to do. They need to be fully toilet trained. They need to be able to show that they can dress themselves. They can skip, they can hop, they can run. What is next? Social development. How do they respond to their name? So if we go back to language acquisition, for a child to be able to differentiate and pay attention to sounds, that already happens by the age of 6 months. So we need to know that if a child is not able to engage and show the response to their name, that is a hearing test for me automatically. Can the child hear their name? Can the child, or does the child know, differentiate, where is the sound coming from? Where do I have to look? If my teacher is talking, my TA is talking, or my friend is talking, where am I going to look? I think that that's a good resource for you to have as well in your arsenal of early childhood development milestones. Then what else do we consider? So we're moving more now into the area of what do I look out for, sort of like red flags, if I can put it that way, and what you can do with regards to language and how you can help the students. So you cannot expect a child to produce language or to produce sounds when they have a hearing difficulty. And I'm not just talking about physical hearing difficulty. A lot of children in this country, in this region, have hearing infections because of the sandstorm, because of the ACs. The amount of students that we could not do speech and language therapy with until their hearing infection have cleared out is so many, I can tell you. So please make sure that you take that in account when you're talking to a child, or when you're getting so frustrated and raising your voice and saying, Abdullah is still not listening to me. Why is Abdullah not listening to you? Always ask yourself, why is this thing happening? Then, do you suspect vision difficulties? I can't expect a child to see a vocabulary image that I'm showing them if they can't physically see, or if they don't have the ability to see. Maybe they'd be farsighted or nearsighted, or they could have an eye infection as well. But these are the things that we should look at. Then pronunciation is very important as well. So speech and language, you'll see children with larger tongues, or sometimes a lisp, or even if they are unable to produce the sound. So for example, some of you who might know, I hope there are some South Africans in the group today, but we've got a sound in South African dialect, in German and in Dutch, and that sound is and you also have it in Arabic. And most people cannot produce that sound. So what is my sound expectation of the child's frame of reference, their zone of proximal development, their scaffolding, whatever we want to call it today? What is my expectation? If a child can physically not produce that sound, then we need to set them up for success. What are you doing to make sure that, for example, in Arabic, the sound that I struggled with the most was ayn. So I hope that someone is not laughing at me with my bad Arabic, but that sound I struggled with a lot when I was learning Arabic. So my frame of reference didn't allow for that sound, but I had to practice, and I had a great teacher who showed me with pictures, with vocabulary. What are you doing to set your students up for success? And then how a student grips a pencil as well. Our motor and muscle memory is very much linked to our brain development, to our language acquisition, and our development of language. And it's not just pencil grip, it's the formation of the letter. How are you making the letter? If you store the letter ah incorrectly in your frame of reference, you are going to say the letter O is an ah your entire life. So make sure that you teach the student with the sound, with appropriate sensory intervention. Then with regards to what else we can consider, how a student walks, how they run, their gross motor development is very important. How tidy are they? How they keep themselves? Are they overweight or underweight? Because there's a large majority of research that goes to show that diet is very important, as you might know. But overweight students tend to have more difficulties with regards to motor skill and social interaction, which then essentially, remember in the beginning I said cognitive and social. Those are the two big elements that help with language development. And then do they have any scars or bruises? I just added these on for when I did this training with our teachers to look at expressive language when it comes to well-being and how we identify whether students are at risk when it comes to safeguarding. And are your concerns in Arabic and English? You cannot just say that the child struggles in Arabic and then expect miracles, but then we see no difficulties in Arabic. So that means that we need to do English intervention and not just Arabic. But if it's a difficulty in both languages, what are we doing to support the child? Then I just thought about adding this one as well for everyone to know, the standard bell curve. So around 68% of the world's population have an average IQ. And when you suspect that a child might have a developmental delay, we can usually identify developmental delays at around the age of 2 years old. So every person has their IQ is set, but it can jump a few points, but not too many. So anything under 90 is considered intellectual difficulty or intellectual impairment. That's where we identify the developmental delays. And then your bracket in the middle, that's the red and the blue, that's our 68% of the world population. That's you and me. Or if you're or if you're fortunate enough to have a very high IQ, that's 110 and above. And I can give you an example that language development doesn't always dictate intelligence. I have a student currently who has an IQ of 143, and he's in KG, unbelievably smart, and he can speak to you about cancer cells, and he can speak to you about old scientific research. Recently, we had to speak about what's the likelihood of someone finding the lost city of Atlantis. And I feel that my brain is very challenged when I speak to this child, and I'm nowhere near as intelligent as him. But his deficit is in social interaction and emotional awareness because he's not able to interact with peers his age. So what am I doing? Although he's beautiful that God gave him this amazing brain that he can have an IQ of 143, but what are we doing to make sure that he can take part in society, that he doesn't feel isolated when he's younger? Because essentially he is the smartest kid that we have in the KG section, but what are we doing to help him a little bit more? And then here's just my frame of reference to remember cultural responsive approaches, especially when it comes to the UAE. The emphasis here is a lot on Arabic social studies and Islamic values, but what does that mean for you as a teacher? How are you supporting them? And how can we add play-based learning to our classrooms? And then looking at that child expectations and the norms that I shared with you earlier, how are you going to apply it to a culturally responsive teacher? And that's it. Thank you very much. I hope that I've got some questions at least. I felt like I spoke a lot.
Well, we've had over 110 people joining for the session today, and that is absolutely wonderful. It has been really informative, really informative. Does anyone have any questions? Now is the time, guys. We've got 110 people on the call at the moment. Oh, I guess you were very clear. You're very clear.
Oh, I think Rosalind has raised her hand. Rosalind, did you want to say something? No, Rosalind didn't want to say, but I just wanted to say that was amazing, Angelique. Thank you. Honestly, I learned so much. It's unbelievable.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Ms. Harmeet. I hope that everyone felt the same.
Yeah, we're getting the comments in. Thank you. Great work. I had some light bulb moments. Yeah, there were a lot of really useful takeaways there. It was awesome. Thank you so much.
It's such a pleasure. I can also, if everyone is okay with just staying like 2 minutes more, I can show you how Widget works if you want to use Widget as part of language development for your classes.
I think that would be amazing. Yeah, Widget is so good. We work a lot with Widget, and it's just powerful. Yeah, please do.
Okay. I'll start with just the resources. So I've collected resources over the time. So sometimes I do teacher training as well. And if anyone wants this Padlet where I have so many resources on that I can share with you, I'd be happy to. There's weekly planners where you can use language development, first, next, then boards, activities for visual schedules. If you want to teach at the age of 2 to 4 when a child is still developing their language, the I want phrases or I need. There's feeling thermometers that I have. sensory board. There's the milestone document as well. So anything that you want, please let me know. I'll ask Dr. Catherine, and then I'll just send out an email or send the resources out. Just let me know.
Yeah, we can add those onto the groups. And I'm going to put your LinkedIn on the group so people can follow you and keep up with all of your posts.
Yeah, sure. I haven't posted in a while because of the inspection and everything, but I have to get back on that.
Angelique, there we go.
So I will just share a quick resource with everyone. So please, please, please ask your schools to use Widget. It is a really, really good resource. And for those who are Arabic speaking as well, they have an Arabic translation available on Widget. So it automatically translates English to Arabic or vice versa. They also have Turkish, because we've got a few Turkish students in our school that struggled a little bit when they came to the UAE for the first time. But essentially what we use it for the most are flashcards. So I'll just show you how the flashcards work. Sometimes we also use it for differentiating of reading activities. So let's say if you're going to teach the children about the ocean, the type here in the bottom, oh gosh, type here in the bottom, you can type the word shark. And then on the right-hand side, it's going to pop up pictures or images of sharks that you can have. And if the child does not know the word shark, at least they will know the image of the shark that's there. So we can also do whale, for example, and it's going to pop up a whale. And then we can do penguin. Oops, penguin. And it's going to pop up a penguin for you. So this is one of the reasons why it's such an amazing resource to use, because it gives it to you automatically instead of you sitting there for hours creating your own resource. And then I will be able to show you our other document as well. Yep, not a flashcard.
I think Widget is in the, have you seen the movie that was shared on our inclusion group yesterday?
Yes, yeah.
Widget, isn't it? That she's using communication.
And I think it might be PEX as well, but PEX and Widget kind of look the same as well. There's a...
Is that movie, where is that movie available? I saw the link, but I couldn't find the, I just thought it was like a trailer. Is the movie out on, I think it'll be good for them to watch it as well, for everybody else to watch it.
Yeah, it is a great movie to watch. Oh, I saw the trailer as well. I want to watch it. Let's put it that way.
I saw the Is it showing? Is it somewhere where I can access it easily, or is it going to come into the cinemas, or how does it work?
That's a good question. I watched it online, but I'm not sure if it was supposed to be there.
All right. Yeah. Okay. All right. So because I saw the trailer and I thought I was waiting, because Kevin was like, oh, I can't wait to watch this. So I was like, okay, maybe I'm missing some part where it is. Yeah.
So the last bit that we use it for is usually for syntax development and when we're doing reading comprehension. So for example, if I have to help a child understand reading comprehension and I want to say, I saw a fat cat on the mat, then I have the ability where this, or not me necessarily, but the text, you can change the size of the text if the child needs accommodation with that. You can change the size of that. So for example, I cannot use this image in my school because it doesn't align with Islamic values. So I can change my image to suit the Islamic values of my school to show that this is a big tummy. Or I can even just delete it and say, I don't want that image at all. Then prepositions are very good. If I know that my child already knows a preposition, I can remove the preposition as well. Then I don't need that image. And it helps a lot with children to for them to pick a word that they struggle with. So you can also do frame of reference words where let's say I only want one image for a science term that I'm using. I know that the child can read perfectly, but it's a new scientific term that I'm teaching them for the older students. Then I just that one term for the students. And that's it. I hope that everyone was okay and that you learned a lot.
It's been wonderful.
Yes,
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
guys, we'll have the recording on our YouTube channel. So please do check it out. Inclusion on YouTube.
Thank you.
And we will see you all next month, inshallah.
Okay.
Have a
Thank
good
Inshallah.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
very
guys. Thank you.
Assalamu.
Have a
Bye.
good
Dr.
day.
Catherine.
Bye.
Thank you.
Assalamu.
Thanks, Miss Ganji. Thank you so much.
It's
Thank
a
you so
pleasure.
much. Bye-bye.
Angelique, could you just stay
Yes.
on for a few minutes?
Yeah, sure, I will definitely. Yes.
Once we kick the
Thank you.
others off, I just wanted to have a quick chat with you.
Let me end the call and you can open a different meeting because we've got to close the recording.
Thank you.
Oh, right.
Please
Okay.
wear
Thank
your
you all.
glasses.
Thank you, Andrea.
It's my pleasure. Bye-bye.
Thank you, April from Clarion.